Hey everyone, welcome to another Sunday vlog post here on Transport Evolved. I thought I'd get all Halloweeny today with the Halloween bandana. I've been making it for one of my other projects, so I thought I'd wear it today. Why the heck not? I want to talk to you today about incentives and disincentives for people buying plug-in cars. I was originally going to talk about the controversy that surrounds the Wyoming senator who is currently trying to end the federal tax program for electric vehicles. He has been backed by the oil industry, the oil and gas industry, to the tune of about $500,000 in the most recent campaign cycle. But I don't really want to talk about that right now. That might be in a future video. What I'd like to talk to you today about is incentives and how we work about making them more fair in the future. I think everyone who owns an electric car today, without question, is going to admit that unless they live in a really progressive country, electric vehicle incentives are not really very fair. They are engineered very often towards people who can already afford to buy an electric car in the first place. Now, I'll admit that there are people who only buy an electric car because they can get the incentive, or maybe they're just on the edge of being able to afford it, and having the incentive allows them to buy that car. But it's very clear right now, if we're talking about the report from the IPCC, that we don't have a lot of time left to change from internal combustion engine to zero emission, whatever that happens to be. Electric looks like it's the most sensible choice right now. And so what we need to do is to try and incentivize car companies to make more electric vehicles. We also need to incentivize buyers to buy more electric vehicles. And at the moment, the incentive programs that are offered are not working in a way that encourages people of all different socioeconomic groups behind the wheel of an electric car. Right now, if you are middle class, upper middle class, that incentive probably is encouraging you to get behind the wheel of an electric car, but otherwise you're kind of stuck. And a lot of our most polluting, our most damaging vehicles are not the ones that are coming straight off the production line in Detroit. They're the ones that have been on the road for 10, 15 years. And if we want to get an improvement, a radical improvement in air quality, then we need to address those vehicles just as much as we need to address the brand new cars and get the corporate average fuel economy standards up, or whatever your local equivalent happens to be. I know some of you get kind of frustrated that I'm sitting here, a Brit, talking about America and using American terminology. I live in America now, so it's the world I now know the best. It doesn't mean that I'm not including a global audience. I try and make it as applicable as possible. So if I'm talking about incentive schemes, or I'm talking about, particular programs, there are usually equivalents where you live, if in a lot of cases at least. So back to this problem of incentives. Incentives get people behind the wheel of an electric car, but only if they are wealthy enough to be able to afford to buy that car in the first place. What it's not allowing people to do, what in current incentives are not allowing people to do, is get behind the wheel of an electric vehicle or a plug-in hybrid if they are in a lower income bracket. And it's those people that we really do need to get behind a wheel of a plug-in car, not only because those plug-in cars tend to have a better reliability than a lot of the other older internal combustion engine vehicles out there, but also because the fueling costs, the running costs of owning and operating an older electric vehicle versus an older internal combustion engine car are much, much lower. Granted, if you own a Nissan Leaf, battery degradation, we know that's an issue. But I have a Nissan Leaf right now with, 73,000 miles on the clock, and it will still do quite happily 50 or 60 miles per charge. And a lot of people only ever drive that at the weekends. During the week, they are going to drive a lot shorter distance to get to and from work. Although, again, I'll grant you that if you are in a lower income bracket, the chances are that you can't afford to live near to where you work, and so you tend to drive further to get to where you need to work. But I would like to see the incentive program changing so that it's not based on, can you afford to buy this really expensive car? Oh, here's some extra money towards the cost. But how can we help you transition your personal vehicle into a cleaner, greener vehicle? That might be a plug-in hybrid, that might be an electric model, whatever. And so what I would like to see, and it's probably quite controversial, is to scrap the current federal tax programs and other incentives like it, and instead focus on transitioning people who may not have even thought about buying an electric vehicle yet, helping them get into an electric car. I'm talking social mobility, effectively. And I know some of you will be like, oh, it's socialism. We only have one planet, so we have to think outside of the box if we are all going to work together to ensure that the climate doesn't change to a point where we humans can't live on Earth anymore. And so having a social program where the money that's currently being spent effectively on tax credits is funneled into assisting families in buying a car, whether that is ensuring that they buy a car that has a good quality battery pack that will have a long life, whether that involves helping them to make sure that there are charging stations in their community nearby to their homes, because a lot of people live in apartments, may not have access to charging at home, or whether it's just encouraging and advocating at a level that these people can gain access to electric vehicles. I have talked to several people who run programs in the LA area, and they actually assist families, lower income families, to make the switch to electric. And they're discovering that people who do make the switch and are given a way of recharging are actually better off than they were on an internal combustion engine vehicle. And I think if we change that incentive program and focus more on affordable electric vehicles and electric vehicles for all, we'd see a transition from automakers too, because they'd stop making high-end vehicles with lots of extra features, and they'd start building cars with a very simple set of features that happened to be electric. You only have to look at how popular the Dacia brand has been. I've said it wrong. Dacia brand? You'll have to tell me how to pronounce it in the comments below. I always get it wrong. You only have to look at how successful that is. That brand has come back in Europe and how popular that brand has become, not because it's a new brand. It's actually an old brand that's come back. I remember them when I was a kid in the 70s, and the brand's just been reborn, but it's been reborn as an affordable brand. Some people would say a budget brand, but it's a no-nonsense brand, and it's part of the Renault group, and it's experiencing great sales because people are buying that because they want a very basic, very functional car. So I think in order for us to switch our mindset away from very expensive electric cars with massive federal tax credits towards people that may already be able to afford to buy those cars. And let's not forget, in order to be eligible for the federal tax credit for an EV, you have to have a tax liability greater than the $7,500 of that tax credit. So again, if you're under a certain income threshold, the chances are you don't have that liability. And so that causes its own problems. So let's get away from that. Let's get towards social mobility programs and funding those programs to assist people to make that step up to an electric vehicle and help provide them with charging and help provide them with the tools they need to keep those cars on the road, keep them running. And if you're turning around and say to me, yes, okay, but what about the distance? What about the range? You know, a lot of people, especially if they've only got one car, cannot afford to have a car that they'll just travel, 50 miles before they have to charge it. I hear you, And I think a solution to that would be to address multimodalism, which is very, very popular in Europe and hasn't really taken on in the US yet. The idea behind multimodalism is that you use multiple forms of transport to get to where you need to go, whether that's a car sharing service, whether that's a train, whether that is some other form of transit, mass transit, car hire, your own personal vehicles. And I could envisage a future where, again, if we're funding these kind of programs, rather than sending money to tax credits to people that can probably already afford it, let's send that money towards multimodal programs to encourage people, maybe discounts on rail tickets, maybe discounts on car rental when they need to go on long distance trips. And then at that point, we start to transition away from this very fractured society when we've got, the middle class, the upper middle class, and anybody above that who are driving around in plug-in hybrids, driving around in electric cars, having a wonderful time, and everybody else who's stuck with expensive, smelly, polluting, environmentally damaging internal combustion engine vehicles. I'd like to know what you think about that proposal, whether you agree or not. Let me know in the comments below. I hope you have a fantastic weekend. I will be back tomorrow, Monday, with more cleaner, greener, safer and smarter news. Very excited. We've got some good projects on the way, but I hope that the rest of your weekend is a fun one. Thanks for watching. Like, comment and subscribe. Buy something from our shop, and until next time, keep evolving.